What you are watching right now is the men's 4x mile at the 2015 Penn Relays. It's a unique distance race where instead of 4 runners doing 1 lap to complete a full mile, 4 athletes instead run a full mile each. After the first couple legs come through the mile in nearly 4 minutes flat pace, one of these teams were well on their way to potentially breaking the 4x mile record set in 2010. On the anchor for the University of Oregon is NCAA legend Edward Cheserek, who at this point in time has a 3:56 mile PR, along with Jordan Williams on standby with a 3:39 1500 PR. The handoff comes in for both of the men at about 12:04, where Ches, or Williams, needs a fast but more than doable sub-4 mile for the record. As soon as they get the baton though, this happens.
Run.
How tactical? Oh, it's going to be a jog fest.
It's going to be a jog fest.
And
just like that, everyone is in the race.
Yeah, and you can actually hear the Penn Relays crowd starting to boo.
Ches is really stopping. They're like, literally, no one wants to go. They are stopping on the track.
There goes Belay.
Yeah, thank you. Look at the crowd.
Oh,
wow.
no.
This is embarrassing. This is embarrassing.
What the hell is going on? Why aren't they actively competing against each other at their full potential? And why did they immediately throw away their chances at capturing the record? What you are witnessing here is a more extreme version of a tactical or sit and kick race. Neither athlete is jogging at 7-minute pace or anything, but the pace is certainly slow enough that it allows not just one team to catch back up, but eventually reaches a point of stagnation where every single possible team is now in contention of winning. And the race eventually devolves into a full-out sprint for the last 200, where Cheserek gets a taste of his own medicine at the end, and Villanova's Jordan Williams brings it home. How did this happen? Why does this happen? And is it something that should happen in the world of distance running? Well, for starters, let's try to describe what a tactical race is, because the term does lend itself to be a little vague if you don't run long distance yourself. A traditional tactical race in the distance running world is normally any race a mile or longer where multiple people within the race form this mutual agreement to run a pace slightly or much slower than their personal best. Then, as the race comes to a close, they slowly pick up the pace more and more, or just do it very aggressively, even to the point where they're much faster than PR pace because of how much energy they've saved up. Let's take Mo Farah's 10,000 meter win at the 2012 Olympic Games. The entire pack runs most of their laps ranging from 64 to 67 seconds, but in the last 2 laps, Mo Farah storms away from the rest of the pack to run a 1:55.57 for the last 800, a pace that elite milers might go out in to run a solid time. A more egregious example would be the 2008 Big Ten Indoor Mile, where the pack goes out through the half in 2:28, but closes the second half in 1:54. If that's a tactical race though, wouldn't gunning it from the start and burning out near the end still be a tactic, especially if it ends up working? Technically yes, but the word tactical is self-described as a more calculated or diligent method of approaching something, which in the case of a very anaerobic or gutsy race is less than likely to be tactical by definition. Fartlek type races where the pace is constantly altered could count as well, but for simplicity's sake, we'll just stick to the aforementioned definition since it's the most common form of it. The psychology behind a tactical race is always interesting to observe. While some people might know a tactical race is imminent or that the race will go out conservative in some fashion, there's never a direct communication between everyone that X pace is how fast they'll run at Y race. It's a tad similar to the prisoner's dilemma, where an athlete could absolutely pull away hard from the pack and run their own race while the rest stay behind, but it is extremely rare this happens, and for the times it does, it can lead to a less than favorable outcome for the aggressor. Basically, if you end up in a tactical race, you're psychologically locked into a certain cadence until one of you decide to up the ante and pull the rest of the pack with you. A well-timed kick is what separates good tactical racers from others, and successful users of this would tell you the same thing. So now that we understand the main premise of how these races unfold, let's answer why these happen. For distance races, especially 5K and up, they are extremely tedious to constantly operate at near 100% effort throughout multiple months of a track career. Given elite athletes spend their entire lives training, running 100+ mile weeks with rigorous workouts intertwined, it's not too surprising these athletes don't have perfect legs under them 24/7, and they'll maybe only attempt a personal best or record a couple times a year, compared to something like the 100 or 200, where the deviation in times is far less noticeable assuming the same weather conditions. Not to mention, if multiple athletes are doubling up at major events, it's very unlikely you'll see any aggression from them during their second race, especially if they're doing the classic 10K 5K double, 1500 5K one, etc. So fatigue is an obvious reason, but weather is just as important, if not more important, to some runners. Given the amount of heat top runners are generating over a prolonged period of time, it's not breaking news that the optimal weather for endurance running relies on the temperatures being as cold as the high 30s for half or full marathoners, and then gets a tad warmer as the races get quicker. If it's hot out, especially during an important race, there is simply no incentive to fry your body within the first half when you can instead just relax a bit with the rest of the crowd and have substantially more energy to gut out the last 10 to 20% of the race. This is why you see during a hot marathon or a brutally cold and windy one, very rarely will the pace be set fast, because the risk to reward ratio is skewed to the point where a DNF can be imminent, or in some cases, will happen irregardless of pace because the conditions are that jarring for an athlete. Lastly, the very existence of a championship race is enough to convince, or at worst, scare athletes into a slower pace. Even if the athletes are perfectly tapered or fresh, and the weather is optimal, again, the risk to reward ratio is skewed in favor of a slower race to mitigate burning out and to have a much more refined kick to trust. This is also due to the fact that time is completely irrelevant and placement is the only thing that matters. The fear of getting caught the entire race is something no athlete wants to experience for more than a lap or so, nor does someone want to kick at the wrong time only to get caught at the very end. So it's not surprising that races even as short as the 1500 can unfold in bunched up jog fests until someone pulls the trigger. That's great that we know why these races happen now, but are they good for the sport? Viewership is extremely important for maintaining relevance in the sports world, but some people would argue that tactical races taint the track and field watch experience. Oftentimes, if the race is tactical enough, you can come across comments from people groaning at the nature of a race not being tough from the get-go, particularly in miles or 5Ks, especially from those who divert to the philosophy of front-running legend Steve Prefontaine. In the 4x-mile race mentioned at the very beginning of the video, you can even hear the crowd booing and the commentators groaning right then and there as they move to a near stop mid-mile. However, lots of people still have this specific race embedded in their heads, including me, because despite how annoying or disappointing it can be to not see someone as prolific as Cesarek not chase for the 4x-mile record, the gimmicky nature of how this race ended up unfolding is nowadays looked upon as a memorable moment in the track scene. Even if it's not a fond memory to some, the fact that it creates a level of notoriety is what makes it so interesting to come back to. This is where you can further make the case that there is a charm to be appreciated with tactical races. But this isn't to say you have to find a way to enjoy them necessarily, because they really aren't for everyone. Although, tactical races actually have quite a few underlying benefits that can increase viewership and create memorable races. For starters, no matter how bored you are initially, the end of these races are so exhilarating to observe, and it brings out a side of an athlete you may have never seen before. Seeing 5K or 10K runners turn into milers out of nowhere, and potentially witnessing the upset of a lifetime because someone got too comfortable with their competition, sets the stage for fantastic storylines, upsets, and especially memorable races. Seeing a commentator lose their shit in the last 400 of a distance race is something I'm sure many of us routinely visit if we want to watch our favorite athlete on YouTube. And seeing it happen in real time is just another feeling. If anything, it's very fair to put these on the same level of sprinting events, since the enjoyment runtime is about the same, if not longer in some cases. The only difference is that there can be a 15 to 30 minute build-up beforehand. Of course, tactical races in large quantities would be unhealthy for the sport's viewership and identity, as pulling in outsiders to watch long races is already difficult to begin with. But at the same time, the sport would be very one-dimensional if every race were just the same moderate pace, with not a lot of room for personality or versatility to shine through athletes. Overall, tactical races have their place in the distance running world and are a much needed style of competing that prevent the sport from becoming stale. After all, some of the biggest distance runners in history made some of their biggest names by racing tactical from front to back. While there are certain methods or degrees of tactical racing that can be viewed as boring or disrespectful to the sport, they're at the same time an odd necessity for not just the viewers of the sport, but also the athletes as well. There are an abundance of factors that can influence a race to be tactical, and some might not even have a reason at all other than to just have an arbitrary mutual agreement to do so. And that, in a way, is the beauty of them. If it happens, it happens. And when the last lap arrives, hopefully you'll still be there to watch something special.